Okay, cool. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar Wednesday. We're super excited to have you all joining us this morning. And we have not only an amazing guest speaker, but we have a really amazing topic that she's going to get into. But before we get started, you all know I have a few housekeeping items that I like to go over. Reminder, my name is Shay. I'm the host of the webinars. The session will be recorded, so you'll receive an email afterwards with the recording and the slides after we wrap up in case you want to reference anything. And then we love engagement. There's going to be some fun polls that we'll do during our webinar time. But if you have any questions, feel free to engage in the chat, share your name, where you're from, share your reactions, and then we'll have time for Q&A before we close. So getting into today, I am very, very excited to welcome Tanya Rosa from Golden Valley Unified School District. They are a K through 12 district in Madera County, also known as the District of Excellence, which she'll get into a little bit later. And they are also one of our really close partners. Tanya supports student and education services. And today she'll be talking about how today's digital native students learn and then what we can all do to meet them with their needs. And so it's a really important topic. It's a really timely topic to have right now. And so with that, I'll let her introduce a little bit more about herself and then get into today's webinar.
So good morning. Thank you for being here with me today. And this is honestly just a chance for me to start a conversation, and hopefully we can continue this conversation. I would love to continue it with you. I am from Golden Valley Unified School District. We are a district of excellence, which we actually are working hand in hand with Parsec as well, because some of that is literally just pouring through our data and making sure that we are aligning our vision and our goals with outcomes that we are seeing. And sometimes that doesn't align, but that's where we have other partners that come in and we start filling in some gaps and some goals to figure out where we can really make those big jumps. And I do believe that some of this here is going to help us make those bigger jumps. Just understanding how the neuroscience, how our brains work, and how the kids, our brains are working just differently. And the hope is in the science. It is what it is. So, yeah. So with today's discussion, a couple of the things we're just going to highlight: generational uniqueness, the neuroscience of regulate, relate, and reason, and then who is Gen Alpha and how can we meet them where they're at. So I'm going to just kind of start with what I mean by generational uniqueness. So every generation has its own uniqueness. It has its own vibe, I guess, if you will. And along that comes trauma. Some we laugh at. Other things like war, the Great Depression, really shaped and reformed an entire generation and their outlook on life and how they responded. So if we start with the generation before the baby boomers, so this is like not my parents. I'm going to tell you guys I'm 51. Not my parents, but my parents' parents. Okay, so the generation before the baby boomers is primarily known as the silent generation. They were born between 1928 and 1945, sometimes referred to as the traditionalists. They were the children of the Great Depression and the World War II, and they were characterized by cautious, hardworking, and they were conformists by nature. Okay. So then they gave birth to the baby boomers, my parents, raised in the shadows of these survivors. They were taught that resilience is measured in sweat, not speech. I don't know about you guys. My parents just, we checked in, we were good. There wasn't a whole lot of like, how are you doing though? As a generation of hippies who never lost their ironclad work ethic, they became the bridge between the world of scarcity and the world of possibility. They started dreaming big, right? They may have been very short with their words, but their provisions and their achievements were how they showed love, and maybe even that sometimes felt like they received love. Okay, so then we go into Gen X. Me, the feral kids, right? That's what everybody, like, if you scroll through, we're the feral kids because our parents were working hard. We're going to school. We're working hard. We're bringing home our grades as long as we're in when the streetlights come on, as long as we're showing up, as long as we make it to dinner. And I'm going to start by saying this. Thank God there wasn't cell phones. because we were doing some things. Let's just be honest. So thank God there weren't cell phones, right? But we all have those stories. We've all been through those things. We all wonder how, at least I do. I wonder sometimes, like, did I make it here? Because I feel like there's a couple of decisions I made at 16. I should not be here. But that's what it was, right? So when I grew up, I was watching the news with my parents on a TV that had rabbit ears, and I was the remote, right? It came on at a specific time, and if you missed it, you just missed the news. The newspaper was another source of news, but it was a printed article. It was a black and white, little bit color. It was grainy. Um, God forbid that if it hit the grass and the sprinklers hit it, you just didn't even get the news that day, maybe. But it was all vetted. It was all secure. Um, and if you were a kid, you were probably just looking for the Sunday funnies, anyways, right? Um, but the news was edited, it was cycled, it moved methodically, it was very slow. I remember as a kid, we went to the Fresno Bee to go do like a tour. And I remember asking, like, well, what happens if that's not the outcome? Oh, it's okay. We have a second edition of that, right? So it was very vetted, it was very put out there. I remember phones. Mhm. Phone had a 20-foot cord. My biggest thing was to be able to sneak it into my bedroom and, like, but then we have the cell phone, the 2000s, right? That completely changed everything. The advent of the smartphone, social media, and the ubiquity of the internet changed the speed and the repetitiveness of how we get information, how our kids get information. News cycles are instantaneous along with live images. War is real. War is in real time. War is being filmed by drones that kids just got through playing with. And now they can see that same type of drone dropping a bomb live. We see things spread on social media much faster, whether they're true or not. And if we're honest, we can't even believe all the things we see because of AI. But we have our kids on this constantly, right? We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So I can almost hear the collective, COVID. I understand. Let's do a little pulse check. Right? Oh, look at that. So as we hear the collective sigh of that, I do want to make sure that we are giving it credit. Global pandemic, rewind to 2020, shut down. We watched it live. School shut down. There were food shortages. There was toilet paper shortages. There was gas shortages. There was water shortages. There was mask mandates. People were driving down the street by themselves wearing a mask, right? So our kids are watching this. Death tolls were on the news daily. There was segregation between vaccinated and unvaccinated. There was a lot of going on. Institutions were panicking. The same institutions that we as adults and kids count on were panicking. I still remember the first time I tried to go get gas, and I didn't have gloves and a mask, and I forgot all the things. And I remember getting in my car going, oh my God, I'm going to die. Oh, wait, okay. You know what? And I thought to myself, if I die because I didn't wash my hands fast enough, I think this is too much. But in the beginning of that, my awareness, my heightened proclivities were to just be on edge. That's what we were hearing. And if we're hearing that, then our kids are actually seeing that and feeling that. It's a complete culture shutdown. And they watched all of this on their phones. And then they literally did 2 more years of life on their phones. And if we're looking at a lot of statistics, which I've started pulling, just the basics like 3 years of us wearing masks, right? 3 years of us wearing masks. There's a lot of beginnings of speech that have been missed. So we have a lot of kids right now in classrooms with speech problems. I think it's something we have to start talking about. So looking at one of the polls for Gen Alpha, do you find most challenging is the short, fragmented attention spans. I kind of thought, oh, we would see that because that feeds directly into what we're going to talk about because we saw so much going on with the racial divides. We saw, and if we're honest, our kids are watching murder watching murder live and in real time. I know my husband in a very bad part of his life. We have gone through some loss. Accidentally was scrolling through, saw a story about Charlie Kirk, didn't realize what had happened yet, clicked on it, and in that moment, he saw him get murdered unexpectedly. He's an adult, didn't sit well. And we have our kids doing this, and they may not be talking to us about what they're really doing. Gen X, our 46 to 61-year-olds, they're spending about 3 to 4 hours of screen time. Millennials, 30 to 45-year-olds, 6 to 7 hours. Gen Z, 14 to 29, up to 9 hours. It's over half their waking hours. Now let's remember that most of our teachers in classrooms are Gen Zs and are millennials, right? So 56% of Gen Z report frequent experiences of anxiety, a rise of uncertainty, increased depression, increased suicide ideation. They are hyper connected, yet they feel alone. I have a daughter that is in this age bracket, and she's a teacher. I know what she lived through in COVID, and I know the effects it left on her. I also have a son who went through COVID. They both graduated from college at the same time. They handled it very differently. But for my daughter, who's now in the classroom and a teacher, it was a hard moment for her. So as a teacher, I know she needs to be able to regulate. She needs to be able to reason. She needs to be able to do all these things for herself first, so that she can then project that for her students. So Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is infants to 16-year-olds. First gen, this is a first generation born entirely in the 21st century. They're fully digital. This is the first generation that has even seen their grandparents on phones. So that means to them, that's everything. We've always had phones, right? Okay, so 40% have tablets by the age of 2. 58% have them by the age of 4. 1 in 4 kids have cell phones by the age of 8. Just walk around an elementary campus. It'll blow your mind. As a result, they're engaging with social media earlier and earlier. And research is showing that these apps and these platforms, with the quick instant gratification, and if they don't like it, is causing these short attention spans. Not all, but it's definitely not helping. Have you ever watched kids just scroll, especially on YouTube? See if they can even sit for 30 seconds before they're going to the next video. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about the neuroscience. So we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive, and we have the questions there. In your experience, which stress response is most prevalent when your students are dysregulated? And it depends on age groups. If you're in a regular general ed class, things like that. Oh, wow. Okay. Freeze. I could see that. Fight, flight. Yeah. I was thinking we might get more flight. I have seen a lot of eloping across the board. And so that's one of the things that I feel like we could really hone in on. Now let's talk about the insight and the hope. The hope is in the neuroscience. So Dr. Perry's neurosequential model for education, flight, and freeze. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Dr. Perry's neurosequential model for education is an approach to understanding how the brain works in an educational setting. But no matter what, your brain works from the bottom up, if you will. Okay. And I'll talk about that. And it's a trauma-informed approach. Now, we don't always have to have the big T traumas. It could be okay, and I'm going to admit, I'm the parent that at times was driving to school, we're arguing with my kids in the back, and then I drop them off at school, and I feel terrible because I just dropped them off at school while I was fighting with them. Now they're walking into a classroom, and they're not going to be regulated, right? Because they just got out of a car where we were fighting. So it doesn't always have to be the big T traumas. It could be those traumas that we have to be notating, and we have to be looking for, that the teacher or the principal, or you know what, sometimes it's the custodian notices, I think this she's a little off today, he's a little off today. Okay. It's universal, it's applicable across the board because it's a stress activation response, right? So it's the same kind of response across the board. When something scary or threatening or upsetting happens, our stress response system is activated. And so we're either going to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I think we kind of all heard this verbiage before, right? Um, but what I want to do right now is kind of go to, I guess, a visual. So I guess I know you've all heard like, yeah, that person, well, especially my generation, you flipped your lid. You have flipped your lid, you're out of control, you whatever, right? Okay, so then let's kind of put some visuals on that, right? So if you want, you can make a fist. And we're gonna put our thumb on the inside, right? So this is your brainstem. This is all your uncontrolled things that happen in your body back here, right? So it's your breathing, it's your pulse, it's your heart rate, it's sweating, it's all the stuff, right? We don't even have to think about this stuff, right? Then you have your relate. This is the limbic system. Okay, this is where you can connect. But this is 100% emotion. Okay? And then you're going to have your reason. You're going to have your cortex. That's the front of your brain. That's up here. This is where you can actually like reason things like, hey, you shouldn't touch that because it's hot. Oh, that makes sense. Okay? So when someone has flipped their lid, and if they're in a stress activated response, okay, let's say someone comes in the classroom and the door slams because it was windy. Everybody goes like this because they were unexpectedly surprised, right? There's a stress response. That was a loud noise. Oh my gosh, what just happened? So when your cortex is gone and you have no reasonable thinking, all you're showing is pure emotion and uncontrolled physical response. Until the teacher can say, it was just windy, the door slammed, everybody's fine, we're good, and then you can start doing this, right? Then the kids can reason. But you always all have to remember, there may be 5 to 6 kids in your class that are still on heightened awareness. They're the me's that are like, where do I need to go? Where do I need to hide? Or you might have the other ones that are the fight, that are who am I going to fight? Who's coming in? Who do I need to protect? So it's little things, right? But that's the neuroscience. So just remember, when you are speaking to a child or an adult to 99, if they are out of control, if their feelings are gone, if they have flipped their lid, you are now speaking to raw emotion and uncontrolled physical response. There is no way you're going to get any regulation, or you're going to be able to have any kind of reasonable conversation with the person at all. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so regulating yourself in the classroom. Daily check-ins with yourself. Yeah, the strategy pivot. According to the Regulate, Relate, Reason framework, where do you feel most educators get stuck when dealing with a triggered student? This is a very important part of you to even self-check, because the truth is, when we have a reaction in a classroom, right? Your students have broken your trust. They have broken your rule. So if we're honest with ourselves, we're dysregulated. So we have to make sure we're checking in with ourselves to regulate before we can move into the situation. And it might even be just that physical, the verbal of, you know what, I need a second to process this. I'm really upset. Can you please sit down? And then we're going to talk about it. So those are very important things. So daily check-in with yourself. What does this look like? I have actually, and I have the resources for it, but it's the DARS, the Devereux Adult Resilience Survey. I find it very, very impactful. Regulate, helping the student physically and emotionally calm down first. Yeah, I agree. It's not easy because you don't always know what to do, right? But sometimes it's not in the doing. Sometimes it's just in the being. So the first thing that I'm going to tell you, especially since that was the first response, is to just sit in front of the person, get down to their level and say, I'm here, I'm listening, I'll wait. That's it. That's all most people need, just to be seen. So the next one is the daily check-in with your students. Grade relevant. I used to have talkabouts with the little kids on the carpet. Be careful with that. Kids talk about all kinds of stuff, especially in TK and kindergarten, that we don't want to share. But it's great because then you can check in the next day. Maybe so-and-so's dog was sick and you shared that in class. And then the next day, you know, oh, I don't know, Gabby wants to ask, Troy, how's your dog now? Well, now you just have community. Now they have a friendship. Now she's going to be checking in on them. Be flexible. Year to year, be flexible. Day to day, be flexible. Student to student, be flexible. Be aware. There are times where you can see a class change shift, and it might start with a hair twirl. One person starts twirling their hair, and then the next person starts tapping their foot. You know that there's a shift coming. Stop. Let's regulate. Even if it's only 2 people, let's regulate the whole classroom. Be honest with yourself and your students. I'm having a bad day. I'm sad. Help them name their emotions. Be consistent. Same thing. And I think the last one, class rules, max of 3. If everything, I'm sure you've heard this before, if everything is important, then nothing's important. You have to choose your battles, especially in secondary. And sometimes in secondary, you're going to ask those kids to come alongside of you. And what are our 3 rules of understanding that we are going to have, that we know this is our class, this is our time, this is our community? We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So with all that, if you just ask yourself as you're walking into these situations, are you just reacting to the behavior instead of responding to the unmet need? Are you just reacting to the little girl that crumpled up a paper and threw it on the ground? Are you responding to a need of, why did she crumple up the paper and throw it on the ground? Nobody else did. Does your site's culture, climate, and aesthetic help or hinder how adults and students learn to self-regulate? I've walked into classrooms that are so cute, but I can't see an inch of wall. Not an inch. Overstimulated. We already have our kids overstimulated by what they're clicking on, what they're looking at, what they're being fed into, how many hearts and likes they're getting. So I know that there is a ton of quality in some of the things that we have up in our rooms, but I also think that the quantity is questionable. So all right, we can go to the next slide. So who is Gen Alpha? Generation Alpha is generally exhibit a shorter, more fragmented attention span, which we are all seeing, and we know why. Driven by lifelong exposure to high-speed digital content like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. Often characterized as preferring instant gratification, their ability to focus on traditional long-form tasks is diminished. That just speaks for itself. And I think we can see that across the board, whatever we're doing, besides just the scrolling and even the things that they are interested in at 7, 8 years old. I just got a Christmas list that asked for Sephora from a 7-year-old that spelled Sephora with an F. So I'm pretty sure she got that from an influencer, which again are the new heroes. Think about that. Influencers are our new heroes. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So key impacts on Gen Alpha, the digital immersion, constant rapid-paced media consumption has altered their focus. They're saying that it could be less than 8 seconds. The educational impact, teachers report difficulties in maintaining attention during long lectures. We know these things. So we're talking about micro-learning, shorter instances, giving the kids brain breaks, not saying that we're going to hold them to a different standard, just helping them in between where their brain already is. Let's meet them where their brain is. Behavioral shifts. Increased rapid fire screen time is linked to decreased patience, and some studies suggest potential connections to reduced focus in classrooms. Have you ever seen, okay, it's me too, and my husband, but click on something and it doesn't work. Click send and it doesn't work. That's what we're looking at. And we've had kids that their whole life now has been click send. So patience, So we can go to the next slide. So be aware. First thing I'm gonna say is be aware of the shifts that you see, the subtle shifts, hair, hair flipping, wiggling in chairs, looking around, or just dead stare. A lot of time that's disassociation, all right? So bring the focus back to you. Advocate for your classroom. You're the self-regulator, you're the anchor. Rhythmic motion and sound. So this is an innate instinct. When we were all in utero, our mama's heart was beating 60 beats per minute. That is a magic number. Okay. So the same thing happens. If you're in a classroom, I'm telling you, just do a clap sequence. If you lost your classroom, even if you lost 2 people in your classroom, do a clap sequence. Maybe you're clapping twice and they're snapping twice. And then you're going to clap twice and then they're going to pound on their legs. Whatever that looks like for you, create some kind of rhythmic motion, movement, or sound, even if it's just music. Definitely brings everything down. Outdoor activities and walks. Outdoors, are grounding essentials. Structured use of timers, fidgets, and feeling charts. And when I say structured, it's structured. I worked in a special education class and we used timers. It was a K4 class of moderate to severe needs. And they knew that there were 3 timers in the back. You could only have 3 people take a timer. But if you needed it, you could go to the back, you could grab your timer, you could sit there quietly, and you could sit there for 5 minutes and watch your timer. You didn't have to ask. I didn't need to know. But we only had 3. So if a 4th person needed it, we had to learn how to regulate a different way, right? Weekly talkabouts, just trying to figure out who your kids are. Know your kids' names. I know that sounds silly, but know your kids' names, know their last names, know their first names. Ask them about their siblings. Hey, how's so-and-so doing? That gives them a sense of self and that you know them. It's big, okay? Intentional grounding techniques, breathing, all those other things. Be careful to unpack the triggers and behaviors after someone is regulated, not in the middle of it. It's not going to help. They're probably going to say some unkind words to you. I also love popsicle sticks for classroom and individual activities. So I have, and if you could email me or whatever, but I have all these little cutouts, and I think calm is pink and energize is yellow and whatever that looks like. And it's like, so this is not working today. Okay, I need Sarah, go grab the calm stick. Let's see what we're going to do. Grab the calm stick. Oh, look at everybody. Sarah's grabbed the calm stick. We are now going to take 5 deep belly breaths together. That's what we're doing. Everybody put your pencil down. That's what we're doing, okay? The last thing I am going to say is ask for help and support, because you may not be their person, and that's okay. Don't take it personal. You never know. I haven't been people's person for multiple reasons. I know that there was one time I actually didn't realize I was setting one of my students off in my class because he didn't like my perfume. True story. So for 4 weeks, I wasn't his person, and I couldn't figure it out. And then we finally figured it out, and we went from there. So don't feel like you're all alone. Bring other people into it, because your mental health is very important and has to come first if you're going to step into a classroom with kids. So that's what I have on these fun slides so far for today.
Thank you, Tanya. Time for Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for Tanya? She shared a lot of really great strategies and resources. So if you want to come off of mute or put your questions in the chat, she'll be here to answer some of your questions.
Absolutely.
That was a great.
And I will leave my email in the chat. I have some resources and some things. I just came back from the 26th California Foster Youth Conference, where myself and a colleague, my friend Bertha Castellanos, spoke, and we came back with just great material to add to what we already have. So I would love to share that if anybody would like that. So I'll just go ahead and add my email in the chat as well.
And then, Tanya, we have a comment from Colleen. She said, a lot of people, including children, cannot process scents. That can affect, or they can affect them. It can affect them physically and cognitively.
Yes. That's very, and honestly, I'm one of those people. Okay, my therapist calls me neurospicy. And actually, Mr. Page, if he's still on this call, I used to work with him, and he knows too. I'm very sensitive to smell. And then there's those other people that like their senses are just, it's just different and sense are different. So you have to be very careful with all of those things. And you don't always realize it because it can bring you back to a place, right? Like, I don't know why he didn't like my perfume. Maybe he just hated the way it smelled, but maybe it reminded him of a person that wasn't nice to him. I don't know that. He was nonverbal. So we just have to be mindful.
Tanya, I have a question for you. I know some of the people in our chat are from online or mixed model schools. So if they don't have a consistent classroom to set some of these things up, what could be done if they're like in a virtual setting with students to kind of, I don't know, is there any way to like adapt the clap and snaps or something like that that would be of assistance to re-regulate the virtual space?
Yes, yes. And so there are times, and I know just on an online type platform can be for some kids, it can honestly be a space that's very nerve-wracking. They don't want to hear their voice. They don't want to see their faces. They don't like what they're, projecting, whatever that looks like, right? And so in those moments, I think a lot of times it's just coming alongside them and meeting again, and I hate to say that, but meeting them where they're at, and letting them know that this isn't my best day either. Or and it's literally just the check-ins. And you may not get an answer or a response from the first email, from the first text message, from the first video chat, from the first FaceTime. I would get very personal and see if you can get like those FaceTime check-ins as much as possible. If there's a meeting space that you can meet, that's great. The other thing I would definitely say is reach out to parents because we need to care for parents. We have parents that have ACEs and trauma and loneliness, whatever, right? From past, present, and maybe even things they're thinking about in the future. So it could be as easy as maybe they're carrying some stress from their parent. And so really doing that wraparound care now, I believe, has to start with our parents. We can't just know who our kids are. We have to know where our parents are. We have to know where our people are coming from. We have to care for them all. Because we are left in situations, especially with extreme traumas at times, where the kids are the parents. It's parentification. So if we can come alongside the parent, help the parent grow up a little bit, right? We all need help. We all need help. Then we are also helping that student because that parent's probably more dysregulated than the student is.
Thank you, Tanya. I'm trying to see if there's any more questions. I don't think there are, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So, Tanya, thank you. This was an amazing presentation. The
Thank you
content
so much.
was A1. So we will get this out to everyone and share the recording and the slides, and I'll make sure that your contact is in the email so people can reach out to you. But for everyone who else is joining us, thank you for joining us on our webinar Wednesday. We hope to see you all next Wednesday at the same time. And then if you have any questions, you can reach out to hello@parseceducation.com. But with that, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week, and we'll see you.